Hello dear listeners, TW here. Join me as I traverse 100 years of horror cinema, one flick at a time. It is a little obvious talking about this, but how can a list of 100 standout or interesting horror films not have 1960s Alfred Hitchcock's classic Psycho? Hollywood legend Janet Leigh plays the role of the love-struck, frustrated, never done anything bad before woman to a T. The film's now famous structure is such that Janet Leigh is billed as the star, and it leads you on just long enough for you to think it is truly so. Tension, especially as she is pursued by the police and riddled with guilt, is masterful. For the uninitiated, the film concerns Leigh's first dabble at crime as she steals $40,000 off her boss so that she can be with her boyfriend who is debt-riddled from an apparently bitter divorce. The tragedy of Leigh choosing to return the money only to fall victim in the film's most famous shower scene is a fair punch to any unsuspecting audience member, especially as she fell 15 miles short of her destination due to sudden rain. It is probably Hitchcock's best thriller and suffers only due to its notoriety, meaning that a new audience will probably know the broad brushstrokes before the stylish opening wraps. If you can focus on the film without the obvious upcoming twist, the first act is a thriller of the highest standard. The music is channeling the driving tension of Jaws some 15 years in the future. The black and white photography was an odd choice at the time, as colour was now the dominant form. Black and white was mostly for budgetary reasons. Just like Tarantino some 40 years later, the lack of colour reduced the gore effects of the shower scene, famously created with 90 cuts and no actual gore. The blood was in fact chocolate syrup. The edits include the close-up of the shower head, her now dead eye fading to the sink as blood drains away, a shot known by any fan of The Simpsons from the 1990s. The film was also quite controversial for showing Leigh in an unmarried sexual relationship, rather tame by today's standards, whilst appearing not once, but 3 times in her underwear, white before her crime, black thereafter. Most shockingly of all, American audiences were shown her toilet. My, the times have changed. What else works? Norman Bates, cinema's most famous creepy killer, is played to perfection by Anthony Perkins. Typecast and doomed to repeat the role in sequels, one of which being surprisingly good, Perkins excels in the role. He would later stand on his own in films such as Catch-22, 1970, however. Janet Leigh, the ultimate scream queen, was one of several Hollywood female stars, along with Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, who had a go at horror flicks in the 60s. She had worked at MGM and with Orson Welles and made a name as a mainstream star. Additionally, Leigh was a trailblazer, as women would get prominent roles in films and horror in the coming years, such as Sigourney Weaver and Leigh's own daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, in Halloween and other iconic films. The scenes with Perkins and Leigh are layers of foreshadowing and clues as to what will come. Without this lineage, the film is still a well-written, perfectly shot masterpiece. It falls down in the epilogue with a clunky exposition scene which Hitchcock was wont to do. However, the final shot accompanied with the lines, "She wouldn't hurt a fly," is yet another iconic flourish of the director at his absolute best. An absolute must for all horror fans. Enjoy.